Auditing firms implicated in National Lottery Commission fraud scandal.
You're watching News at Prime. Let's get into this conversation now. A special investigating unit is probing implicated 5 auditing firms for allegedly aiding criminals loot millions from the National Lotteries Commission. Over 30, that's 30, non-profit organizations are said to have used fraudulent financial statements. Let's speak now to the NLC Commissioner Jodi Scholtz, who joins us from Pretoria this evening. Jodi, good evening to you and thank you for your time. Let me start the conversation this way. What is the criteria for any NGO that is applying for grant funding from the National Lotteries Commission?
Thank you so much, Jodi, for having me on your show. The National Lotteries Commission, we have 3 categories of grants: small grants, medium grants, and large grants. For small grants, it's just financials that are reviewed, and for large and medium grants, it's audited financial statements. We also, depending on how the organization is registered, if they're registered as an NPO, they need to comply with the Department of Social Development and the NPO Act. If they're registered as an NPC, a non-profit company, they need to be registered with the Companies and Intellectual Properties Commission.
Yeah.
And so those criteria would differ, but they need to be registered. There needs to be directors, depending on the length that they've been in business or in operation. That would then depend on whether they would then qualify, whether we would need them to partner with another organization. So if they in existence for less than 6 months, for instance, they would then partner with another organization.
I'm interested in those financial statements that these NGOs ought to submit. Are these supposed to be audited? If so, over how many years would they need to present such statements?
Typically, it's 2 years audited financial statements with a recognized auditing firm. So I think the firms that you are that the SIU has alluded to, and it's not just auditing firms, clearly. In the past, the SIU has a broad term called professional enablers. So there are also a number of legal firms and conveyancers who have also been implicated in this. And so the process currently is that the SIU is busy with its investigation. Once they've concluded that, they then liaise with the relevant associations or bodies that these firms are affiliated to start a process of deregistering them from these associations.
And these small accounting and auditing firms, the understanding here is that they helped over 30 NPOs, or what would previously be referred to as NGOs. 30 NGOs submit fraudulent financial statements in order to unlock millions of rands from the NLC. What steps have you as the NLC followed upon receiving this information? Because the immediate assumption from a non-law person like myself is I would go to a police station and open a case.
So the SIU would open those cases because it's their investigation. What we've done is we've developed a risk-based model. And so any NPOs or NGOs or NPCs who do use these firms that are now on our radar, they would go through a slightly more rigorous evaluation process. So they wouldn't just, pass through the system. We'd look at it very carefully. We are also considering bringing in independent sources to help us verify those financials. But yes, certainly picking up this trend of fraudulent financial statements is a big concern for us.
What happens now to those 30 NPOs who have received monies fraudulently?
So they form part of the SIU investigation. And where they have diverted the funds and it hasn't been used for the intended purposes, the SIU would then lodge those cases with the NPA, and the Hawks would then do their investigation. And they would then let us know. But the process with the SIU is that there's a very collaborative process, and we are aware of these individuals. So we've also started what we internally call our non-compliant grantee process. So it's effectively on two legs. The one is non-compliance. NPOs haven't submitted a progress report, and there's a process of rehabilitation for these organizations, and then where there's fraud and corruption, and we then list them as such.
Yeah, I'm listening to your responses, Jodi, and I have to say to you that every time you've given me a response, there is a constant reference to the SIU. Are you able to tell us what the NLC's own compliance processes are in order to pick up on these fraudulent claims? Because if those aren't in place, then it is going to be the same situation time and time again.
Absolutely. That's what I was referring to in terms of the non-compliant grantee process. So we have this process in place. We've also been able to beef up our forensic capacity with quite a bit of data analytics. Today, we've launched our online application system, which builds in what we call application program interfaces. So we've got the systems link and interface with SARS, with the Department of Social Development, with CIPC, as well as the South African Fraud Prevention Services. So there's a multitude of control mechanisms that we've put in place, including a pre-assessment site visit, because the SIU has also indicated to us that quite a few of these NPOs actually don't exist, because the NLC previously, under the previous board and management team, didn't go out to verify whether these organizations existed. So we've had to look at all of these internal controls, these measures, and put measures in place. We also have partnerships with the banks who are able to also pick up fraud and corruption if there are syndicates that are operating. And so our system is built around all of these. So there's quite a bit of artificial intelligence and deep machine learning that's been built into the system to ensure that monies go to those that it's intended to go to. So yes, quite a lot of work has been done for the NLC to beef up our compliance.
How would you respond to a critic? Because this particular case we're talking about, my assumption is that it is the latest to hit the NLC. And we know there is documented evidence as to the looting that has gone on from the NLC by unscrupulous individuals. How would you respond to someone who says the current leadership at the NLC is no different to that which was led by the former chair, Alfred Nebutanda?
Well, I would have a very strong objection to that statement, because the current leadership has put mechanisms in place to ensure that monies are not misappropriated. We've spent a long time looking at our research-based funding model as well. Previously, that was where the bulk of the fraudulent activities happened. And so we've had to relook at that. So it's based on solid research. It's not just on a whim or on somebody going out, looking at a project and saying, oh, here's a way in which we can loot. And so the current board, as well as the current management team, have really worked to ensure that there are mechanisms in place. There are even mechanisms in place that if, as the commissioner, should my hand be in the cookie jar, there's an independent reporting line for that. And so we've got to make sure that we're building a robust NLC, that the legacy lives long past the current board and the management team. And you can only do that by building a solid system, by ensuring that you've got compliance and that you've got all of these partners within an automated system. Because previously, the previous administration didn't even ask for an ID number. They didn't ask for tax clearance certificates. So these are controls that we've put in place to ensure that monies go to those deserving organizations. So, for instance, now we can track ID numbers. So we can see that individuals, how many times they are applying.
Yeah.
And we are then able to put together a particular view, and that then helps us strengthen our monitoring and our evaluation. And often at times, we refer this to our forensic investigation unit.
Yeah. You are making very clear statements about the turnaround. Perhaps it might be slow, but what you are telling us is that these are concrete steps that are going to help stem this tide, if you like, or stem the looting, simply put. Nonetheless, would you agree, though, that the institution does have a credibility crisis nonetheless?
I think it's a legacy crisis that the NLC has, and we are working to address that. And the only way to address that is through rebuilding trust. It's not a sprint; it's a marathon. So, for instance, previously the internal audit unit hadn't reported cases to the police. I think for this year alone, we've reported 21 cases. I think last year it was around 44 cases. So where we pick up these instances, we report these matters and we follow them up. We've also got a partnership with the South African Fraud Prevention Services so that we are able to access individuals who've been implicated in fraud in other institutions, because you are finding a trend that sometimes individuals are listed as directors of NPOs, but now they're coming back as service providers, and our system is able to pick that up. So these are real concrete steps that we've already taken and put in place to ensure that we stop this corruption.
Yeah. Final question. There are those NPOs that are genuinely doing good for society, and many communities rely on these, and part of that is assisted by the monies that come from the NLC. But there's a crisis that is looming large, and it is as a result of the lotto operator that has yet to be appointed, at least the next one. Where is that process, and what is the bottleneck as you understand it?
I'm not going to comment on that. Safe to say that the process is now with the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition. The board has done their work, and the Minister is in the process of consultation, and it's his decision and his announcement.
Jodi Scholtz, thank you very much for your time. The National Lotteries Commissioner, talking to us about the turnaround that the institution is trying to put in place.